this is not typically the first question I ask, but I think it's relevant. We're almost completely through 2025. And as we have seen within this year, especially with a lot has been going on, and like my sister Savvy Sabs always says, 2025 is going to be live. How are you actually doing in the scope, not just the political scope, but also in relation to how the world is operating? And I know that the second anniversary of October 7th is going to be on Tuesday. How are you doing?
I mean, it's pretty difficult to, keep the faith, as I implore people to do at the end of episodes, when, humanity has demonstrated that it has no bottom, it seems, and to have to contend with the reality of what so many folks are not only willing to tolerate, but be willing to implement. Those in power who are continuing to litigate this genocide, the people who are leading the ostensible resistance party, who offer very little in the way of resistance and are again and again willing to gamble away electoral victories and would rather shepherd in Donald Trump and all of the repression that we've seen over the course of the last year, rather than simply support an arms embargo against Israel, for instance. So, it's difficult. And with all that Trump is doing to infringe on people's speech rights and to spirit away immigrants and American citizens and green card holders alike, and the sort of complicity of so many folks who are willing to revise their ostensible commitments, the purported commitments to free speech, when their guy is doing it, it's very difficult to watch. It's been difficult to watch so many white leftists, and I mean leftists, not just liberals, sort of go out of their way to identify with Charlie Kirk after he was murdered, in a way that I've never seen them do with, any number of victims of police violence or the whole Daniel Penny subway fiasco in New York. So it's a hard moment to have faith in humanity, generally speaking. I will say on the flip side that I really enjoyed the community that I found by meeting people at pro-Palestine events and free DC events and things like that. And that's a constant balancing trick. And we were talking about having just exercised before coming on here. I think running helps. I'm cooking meals and eating what I want to eat, and sort of like acting like this is the last time I'm going to be able to have steak because of the FDA and things falling apart. So just trying to enjoy the simple pleasures of life as long as the pleasures of Western modernity still avail themselves to us. So it's definitely difficult. It's a balancing act.
Yeah. And it's been a balancing act for me, to be honest with you.
How are you managing?
Short little story. I was up early this morning, and my mother lives with me, and she knocks on my door. She said, "I think there's somebody sleeping on our back porch." And so I hurry, I grab my things, and then I grab my phone. And for anybody who is a tip for anybody who ever thinks that something might be about to go down, especially when it comes to police or something like that, don't press record, go live on a social media platform. Because then if people are watching, then they can also screen record just in case. So then nobody can erase it from your phone because it's already out there. And so I went live on Twitter this morning to see if something maybe had went down, or maybe if the person was homeless, I can be like, hey, this is not the place. And I completely understand. I was ready to, if that person was hungry or whatever, I was ready to grab stuff out of my cupboard, give it to him, be like, look, for the safety of, my family, I can't have you on my back porch, and, things like that. Right. And so then I was prepared to do that. Nobody was there except for a backpack and a pillow. That's all I saw. And there was nobody of my family, the backpack and the pillow. And so this reminds me of when I was walking because sometimes I walk to my doctor's appointments, and as I was walking past the bus stop, behind the bus stop was a woman sleeping under covers. And in the area that I live in, it's more of an economically depressed area. And so there's a interesting thing. It was spoken about by Dr. Joy Gray, where she did a lecture on what's called post-traumatic slave syndrome. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that lecture, but it was a very profound lecture. It's about 90 minutes. She goes over the history and the pathology of what has happened, not just Black Americans like ourselves, but also the pathology and how it has affected the minds of white people in this country over the years. And so one of the things she talks about is the trauma that's carried over, because we may not experience the trauma, from the outset, from first person, but from second person and third person, we may experience trauma of seeing somebody go through something. And many of us are experiencing second and third person trauma. Many have been seeing this for years. A lot of us talk about what happened on October 7th and the Holocaust going past that, but also what happened before. In many of our neighborhoods and many of our families and friends, we have been experiencing these secondhand traumas that have been happening to us over and over. And so it feels like it's coming up to a head right now. And it feels like some people's heads are still in the sand because it's the comfortable place to be instead of acknowledging, hey, this system is not working. We have to do something. But the part that scares them the most is actually doing something, and not doing the same old thing that we've been doing before. Is doing something new, because people are resistant to change because it's like, I don't want to go somewhere I've never been. And so the problem is that they are going somewhere they've never been, and mostly white people. I'm going to be honest with you, because a lot of them have never been to where people like you and I have been, or people in our community have been, because they've been somewhat shielded. I say somewhat because it's not limited to all of them, right? But they've been shielded in that way because it hasn't reached them yet. But now the system, whether, if you want to call it corporatism, capitalism, is now looking its sights on them and seeing, not only are we going to exploit them, but we're going to subjugate them just like we did the others that we have historically in the past. And that's what I see bubbling forth. And I'm hoping that more people will be brave enough to say, you know what? I don't know what's on the other side, but we have to try. That gives me faith, but at the same time, I'm cautiously optimistic about the future. And I do have some friends and comrades that are a little bit more pessimistic than I am.
What makes you cautiously optimistic? That enough people are sort of increasingly affected by the problems of the world, that they're willing to act than they might have been before?
I feel like I'm cautiously optimistic because we have no choice but to be. Because otherwise, human existence ends, right? Human existence does not move forward at all. Because if the powers that be, I like to call the parasite class, has their way, then the subjugation of everybody else will result in the not just the spiritual death, but also the physical death of everybody around them. So then who's left? Well, then it comes down to them. But then if it comes down to them, then they're going to subjugate each other and to their own destruction. Mm-hmm. And really, in order to save ourselves from that destruction, I have faith, because the will of humanity is to fight for a more dignified life, because we just won't take it. I don't know if that's a sufficient answer.
No, I was just
Yeah.
curious. It's not like there's a right or wrong there, I think.
Yeah. Thank you so much for watching, and I appreciate it from the top and bottom of my heart. If you'd like to see any more,